Wolcott was a 15-year-old boy who lived in Georgetown, Texas, which is a small town north of Austin, Texas. At the time of the crime, the town had a population of around 5,000 people. He lived there with his father, Mr. Gordon, mother, Miss Elizabeth, and an older sister named Libby. Mr. Gordon came from a well-respected family in New Jersey. He was a professor and also the head of the biology department at a university in Georgetown, Texas. Miss Elizabeth was from South Carolina and loved by many people within the community. She was known to have a Southern charm and was active in the local church. Libby was a normal 17-year-old high school student. She had big dreams for her future, which were cut short due to her brother's actions. James was a smart young man with an above-average IQ. He enjoyed reading and wanted to be a part of the anti-Vietnam War movement that was taking place during that time. He also had a promising future as a musician. On August the 4th of 1967, James made the horrible decision to use a firearm to unalive his entire family. Earlier that evening, James and Libby went to watch a movie with some friends. When they returned home around 10 p.m., their parents were still awake. They were most likely waiting up to make sure that their children made it back home safely. They stayed up talking till around midnight when Elizabeth and Libby decided to go to bed. Professor Gordon stayed in the living room to continue his reading. James went into his bedroom and later returned to the living room with a firearm. He fired 2 shots at his father, hitting him twice. James then went into Libby's bedroom and fired 2 shots, also striking her twice. His mother heard the shots from her bedroom. She screamed as James entered her bedroom where he fired 3 shots, striking her all 3 times. After brutally unaliving his family, he hid the firearm in an overhead attic of his bedroom closet. James then ran out of the house to the main road where he was able to stop a vehicle that was carrying 3 students. He was upset and asked the students to take him back to his house because someone had just unalived his family. Although they were hesitant, they agreed to take him back to his house. When they got back to James' house, he became more hysterical, yelling and banging on the front porch. The students then went inside the house where they discovered the deceased bodies of Professor Gordon and Libby. Miss Elizabeth was found in her bed. Although she was alive, she was in really bad shape. The students immediately called the police, then went back outside to where they found James, still on the porch, yelling, asking how could this have happened to his family. The students said that James seemed really upset. However, they felt very uncomfortable around him and they didn't feel any sympathy for him. The police arrived on the scene around 3 a.m., where they began questioning James. He told the police that he had become very angry with his family's behavior and that he felt they were trying to drive him crazy. He stated that his mother would chew her food very loudly, which would cause him to have to leave the room. His sister's accent began to annoy him, and his father did not like the fact that he was anti-war. James said that he wanted to go to a protest, but that his father would not allow him to attend. He believed his family had completely turned on him, which is what led him to ending their lives. As his mother laid in her hospital bed fighting for her life, James was in the waiting room of the hospital continuing to be hysterical. The family's church minister asked the hospital staff if they could give James some medication to help calm him down. Unfortunately, Miss Elizabeth later died from her injuries. When James was told of his mother's passing, all he had to say was thank you. James continued telling the police that someone else had unalived his family. The Texas Ranger asked James how was his relationship between him and his father. When the Ranger asked James if he had killed his family, James answered, "Yes, sir." He admitted that he hated his family, especially his parents. James went on to explain how everything took place that night. James was read his Miranda rights. He said that he did not need a lawyer and was willing to cooperate with them. He also took the police to where he hid the firearm. James was arrested to be held in county jail until his trial. The family's church held the Wolcott's funeral services. Although James was in jail, the sheriff gave his permission to let him attend the service, but James chose not to go. Instead, James took that time to write a letter to the people of the anti-war peace movement, apologizing for any negative attention that his actions may have caused towards the movement. He stated that he was being charged with 3 counts of murder and that he would most likely be admitted into the state mental hospital. He seemed pretty confident that he would not be going to prison, although he had not had his day in court. The trial began on October of 1967. James, who was now 16 years old, was found competent to stand trial. He would be the first minor to stand trial as an adult in Georgetown, Texas. Attorney Will McLean decided to take James on as his client, which left many people confused because Mr. McLean's wife was a friend and co-worker to Professor Gordon. James eventually admitted to planning his actions a week before he ended his family's lives. During the trial, several medical psychiatrists took the stand for both the defense and the prosecution. They testified that at the time of his crimes, James was mentally unstable and labeled as paranoid delusional and showed signs of schizophrenia. They also stated that he did not show any signs of regret for what he had done, but that he did have a history of wanting to self-harm. He also had a habit of sniffing glue, the glue that he used for his model airplanes. James said that the night of his crime, he went into his bedroom and sniffed glue, which is what may have given him the courage to follow through with his plans for that night. It was reported that James smiled as the verdict was being read, as if he had already known what the outcome would be. James was sentenced to Russ Mental Hospital in Nacogdoches, Texas on February the 2nd of 1968, where he was ordered to stay until he could be found mentally stable. While James was hospitalized, there were rumors that him and his psychiatrist had such a good relationship that at some point James actually moved in to the same home as him and his family. It was reported that all of James' medical records had been destroyed, which could have been a result of the relationship that he had with his psychiatrist. After only serving 6 years for the crime he committed against his family, he was released back into the public without any restrictions. During his years at Russ Hospital, he focused on his education. After 2 years of being released, James received a bachelor's degree from Stephen F. Austin and legally changed his name to James St. James. James went on to live a normal life by receiving a PhD in psychology and became a professor and the head of the behavioral science department at Milken University in Decatur, Illinois. James failed to report his medical and criminal history that took place 20 years earlier in his background check. He knew that if he had reported that detail, he would not have been hired. James went many years without anyone at the university knowing of his past. However, in 2013, an article written by a Texas journalist named Ann Gardner revealed James's criminal background. When the town heard the truth about James, the city councilman said that James should have informed the university of his criminal past. The mayor said that James should resign to prevent the school from receiving any more negative attention. Although many of the students and colleagues were shocked to hear of James's past, it was not enough to make them turn on him. They were simply judging the man that they knew and built relationships with over the years, and not the boy who unalived his family many years ago. One of his past students said James was a really good guy and she felt sorry for him because his life was being turned upside down. Since the school didn't have a problem with his past, he was allowed to continue working at the university.